So let's talk about the idea of bringing stuff into Old School RuneScape, because it goes through content voting, the community vote. Old School RuneScape updates are proposed by the design team, and then the player base votes on what they want. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's a 75% majority is needed for a vote to pass. So the player base is effectively steering the game's direction by majority vote. Now, this community focus has actually stopped several bad updates from happening. It's kept the integrity of the game, but equally it's also stifled potential creativity and potential future updates from happening. I mean, you've got no broken weapons, which is great, but we've also got no new skills. As designers, when you give the community a choice, when you give them authority over your ideas, how much anxiety do you feel for that? Is that a good idea? Are there moments that you feel the game has missed out on good content, which may not be great now, but had the potential to be great later, because the players voted against it?
I don't know who goes first.
Elena, let's go for you. When you're looking at the community vote, how do you feel about giving players that much authority?
It's a big question, right? I think it's the whole polling system is so unique. So there's not really like another game to look at for how they do it. And we've just kind of been paving the path for how to do it for such a long time now. Ever since the game was, or the game's always been big, but ever since the team was really tiny, I think it kind of just ties back to like its roots of the game, right? How it came into existence because of a poll. And since then, every update has become, part of the game because of a poll. I think there's something beautiful about that. It's also a big part of its success, right? I think a lot of the players kind of had a mistrust against the company after certain updates in the past and kind of felt more comfortable feeling like they're more in charge of the updates that go in. At the same time, it's like a soft encouragement for us to keep talking to the players and kind of steer us in the right path and make sure that we're doing the right thing, as well as it holds us accountable for stuff as well. Because we know that when I'm designing stuff, I know that whatever I do has to pass a poll. That's always in the back of my head. So I know that like I can't half-ass this. This has to be good, because if it's not going to be a thing. It's not going to get into the game.
When you are putting out a potential update, Kieren, let's go to you with this, and it doesn't pass, how do you deal knowing that you could have had the foundation of something great here? I mean, I like the idea of warding. I like the idea of a new skill, but it seems that you've got the elements of spite voting, you've got the elements of people voting against new skills because they're already maxed and they don't want to max again. What roadblocks do you see the voting system as actually throwing up against you as a designer?
Well, I think that, sticking with this sort of theme of the bad sides, the cons, yeah. It takes away surprise. So as the designer, right, everyone knows kind of most of the details about what we're about to release. The whole process actually takes quite a lot of time. Obviously, we're spending time designing something, and we've got to get quite a lot of meat on that bone to offer players. We're not simply asking, do you want this? Yes or no. It's, do you want this? Do you want this detail of this? Do you want this detail? With a full blog sort of outlining the design for a project. So it costs a lot of time. There's the spite voting thing you say. It particularly gets into really treacherous territory around things that are bigger, more complex, different from what we've done before. So a skill is the one you just mentioned. It ain't no secret we really love to do a skill, and hence why we've tried several times in the past. It's something we're still keen on and want to explore again soon. But it's so complex. People want to have a sense of understanding what something is. But a skill's so interwoven into the game. There's so many different aspects to a skill. How you train it, how fast is the skill, what are the rewards, and how do they interface with the rest of the game. So it's scary, combined with takes a lot more reading and digesting of info to really understand it. And now I see it as, it's on us as the game's designers, the team behind the game, to put across the players and sell them on that journey. Like, why do we want to do this? How do we see the future of Old School looking with such a thing? Because I do think it's exactly as you say, particularly with a skill, they're foundational to future content. We can tell stories on the back of it. We can build new systems and game additions onto that skill. And no skill comes out complete, and no skill's ever finished, because we can always add more stuff. So yeah, I'd kind of ultimately summarize, like, polling's a key part of Old School. It's probably going to stay But I think 10 years in, we've learned a lot. We've made a few small alterations. We've even experimented with sort of restricting voting to only the players it will affect. The difficulties in that is defining who it affects versus who it doesn't. But I think the real important thing we've learned from all of this is it's communicating that's important. Not necessarily the actual act of adding a yes-no vote. It's the fact that we're putting out there and putting a blog out there, get an understanding. Do people like this idea? We get on the Q&As and talk to them in more depth. It's that understanding that, yeah, players are really keen on this. And it's stopped us from making mistakes. It has made content better. It stopped us from doing things that wouldn't have been good for the game. So that's where I see we've gained so much from it. But largely, you can achieve a lot of that just from purely being willing to talk, being open with your players, and at the end of the day, so many of the team are players themselves. We do have a fairly good read on how we expect things to go. So what I'd sort of come back to is where it stifles us is that ability to do the bigger shifts. And I think that's where we need to play with the polling system as well to really understand what's its purpose, how can we make sure that we take the right steps forward with the game if we do want to do a new skill, for instance.
You mentioned that a lot of the team are players themselves, and I can absolutely attest to this. A friend of mine, Shogun, on the kind of RuneScape 3 team, he finds it hilarious whenever I'm trying to stream or trying to play or trying to make a video to find me and then turn into a massive spider. I believe it's the Arachnus one, and it was a little bit frightening the first time he did it, and never gets old being chased around by various boss monsters over the overworld, and I'm never quite sure if they're meant to be there or not, so I always run away. Then I realise it's him. There is...
Next time I'm gonna spawn behind you as a snail.
Don't. I've got the download. That would scare me more than anything.
It's gonna happen.
So let's talk about the skills that are in the game right now, because I believe there are skills in the game right now that would not pass a poll. If you poll fire making, as it is right now, just burn logs, people would probably go, no, this is not deep enough to really be integrated into RuneScape. But fire making has been grandfathered into so many quests and so many systems and so many things that it's kind of needed now. What is one aspect of the game, whether it's a skill or a mechanic or an element of combat or exploration or UI, anything, that you as a designer want to get your hands on and rework because you think you could do it justice? Elena, let's start with you. One thing that already exists that you want to mold into a better version of itself, what would it be?
I do agree with fire making. I think that you say it has its place in the game now, but that's very deliberately. Like, we've added stuff to make it more useful because it was just, you burn logs, that's it.
Yeah.
It had no use. At least now it sort of does, and we're kind of keeping that in the back of our minds. Like, try to make it useful now and then. But if I could get my hands on anything, I would say probably smithing. Because I feel like the progression in smithing is just so wrong.
99 gets you a rune plate body, doesn't it? Which doesn't feel right.
Which is very low to medium level armor, right? You need 40 defense to wear it, but you need 99 smithing to make it, which, would take a normal player weeks, if not months, to get. Which is absolutely insane. So I'd love to remake that. I think there's tons of space with the smithing skill as well to expand on that. So let's say rune got pushed down to like 40, 50, where it kind of resembles the defense level you need. Then there's a lot of reward space there for future expansions and stuff we could add. For example, dragon, right? Currently you can't smith dragon. Where does it come from? Let's find out.
We saw that in RuneScape 3 with this mining and smithing rework, which I think was one of the most positive changes to the game in general, and mining and smithing is now a phenomenally fun and interesting thing to do in RuneScape 3. Kieren, if you could grab one element of the game, whether it's a skill, a mechanic, or an element anywhere, what would you do?
The thing I've had a bee in my bonnet about for ages now is the energy system. And this sounds, it's mundane, it's the least exciting thing I could possibly talk about, but the run energy system is so harsh. It's so brutal when you start a new account and you run for about 10 seconds and then you're walking and it feels so slow. So that system I think really needs looking at all the way through so that things like potions and outfits that help you with energy are still meaningful, but that we aren't so ridiculously harsh on particularly new players who don't have teleports to get around easily. They haven't got all these fast travel methods. they're the ones that are suffering most, and also the ones who don't have high agility levels and don't have all these potions, don't have all these outfits that help you. I think that system needs some love to bring it into a modern standard.
The energy system does seem to bring a lot of annoyance to players, especially in things like Underground Pass or some of the jumps in the Sophonem quests, where you're effectively just standing waiting for your energy to refill before you attempt to jump, which isn't necessarily the most engaging gameplay, but if you can think of a way to redo energy, please poll it, because I think a lot of people will be interested in seeing where that goes.